All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in for another video. Gonna discuss a few scriptures today. If you haven't noticed the theme yet, it's really Christ-centered, right? So, the center is the seed, and the seed is the word. The word is Christ. But I digress. So I'm just going to demonstrate a few things on how certain scriptures apply to logical circuits, how they apply to the what's known as the Kundalini energy. All right, but without further ado, I've been discussing certain symbols for quite a while. These ones popped up yesterday, right? But I'd like to start with Matthew 5:44, love your enemies. Okay, so when you love your enemies, you are emitting that light that you have, right? Well, where does that light even come from? It comes from God anyways. So you're emitting the light of God, and if you do so without resistance, Matthew 5:39, resist not evil. Don't resist giving away what you have, right? But at the same time, don't resist them taking it either, right? So that whole black hole concept, the sun even shines its light upon the black hole. Now, in terms of the chakra energy, like I discussed before, the black hole pulls that water, right? The end of the river, or we call the ocean or void, pulls that river, just like how up here it is pushing. Push, pull, yin, yang, right? Working in unison because they're ultimately part of one system. Okay? And then on top of these two scriptures, well, let me back it up a little bit. So when you're resisting not evil, right? The negative resistance is 0. So in a circuit where energy is flowing and there is no resistance, ultimately what that comes down to is superconductivity. Okay, now superconductivity for what? Well, we're dealing with spirit, so more so the spirit of truth, spirit of love, right? Ultimately one and the same. But when you love your enemies and resist not evil, the positive and the negative balance each other and create, I shouldn't even say create, bring about a state of balance within the being. And that state of balance, right, is what is necessary in order to be able to build any sort of positive direction. And that's just, that should be common sense, right? It's hard to build a house, if the support beams aren't stable and balanced. Or I guess it would be plumb in terms of masonry and building. But I digress. So if your foundation isn't level, if it's imbalanced, everything else built on top of that is going to be imbalanced as well, unless you know how to adjust for that. But even still, it will take away from the structural integrity of the rest of the structure. Likewise, even if your foundation is perfectly level and balanced, if you're trying to build anything on top of that that hasn't been balanced, isn't plumb, isn't level, it will lead to the collapse of the structure, even with the foundation still being there. Hence why you have, I wouldn't even call it the left, why you have people in government attacking the very foundation of the United States of America, the 10 amendments of the Bill of Rights. Okay, that is the foundation. Okay, funny, 1-0 logic combined, right? But that explains a lot. Right? If you tear apart the foundation, then you're tearing apart the entire structure ultimately. But to do so with everybody inside is only going to lead to disaster, including for the people that are inside the structure. All right, so moving on. This also resonates with Matthew 10:8. More specifically, freely ye have received, freely give. It tends to, the whole thing follows along with this, but it starts off with heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. And if you notice, it has that same 1 love 0 theme to every one of those. Okay? Freely ye have received, freely give. The light bulb doesn't hold on to all that energy, right? It gives it freely. It gives it in the form of light, and it gives it back by allowing the electricity to flow through the opposite end of the circuit. Because ultimately, current goes up through the filament and then back down through the rest of the circuit, right? And at the same time is giving out light freely. Sort of like how when the black hole releases its chaotic energy, or for the sake of simplicity, the duality, when it releases that duality back into the universe, ultimately it just gets recycled back through the solar deity anyways. So goes up and then back down and then back up and back down. That's ultimately the cycle of life, the circle of life that we deal with within the confines of physical reality, at least in external circumstance. So obviously that correlates to few things, right? Positive, negative, right? Ultimately, this should be, the love of love, placing love at the highest. And this would ultimately be really the love of logic, which would correlate to the love of self and the love of others before the love of love itself. Now, the black hole would be like that selfish love. It's still love, right? But it's in the form of selfishness. It's animalistic. It's seeing you and I and everything else as separate beings. And to an extent, there is, again, some truth to that. The 1 and the 2, right? But the 2 is a 1 and a 0. There is some truth to that concept that there is separateness within the universe. However, there's also falsehood behind that. Now, oddly enough, I hope you remember that little diagram because I'm erasing it now. The funny thing is if you look at some depictions of the Kundalini energy, obviously you've got your chakra system, but the way that it runs up, I guess I should fix that a little bit. There's a feminine component to it and a masculine component to it. Now, there's a reason why I have tattoo on the back of my head of the staff of Hermes. I really got to get some different markers, some newer ones. The staff with the wings up here. Wow, that's crude. Let's try that again. Right, you got the twin serpents, one that is seen as evil, one that is seen as good, but ultimately they're part of the same staff for the same reasons, correlating once again to that Kabbalistic tree of life, the Kundalini energy, the Norse tree of life, Yggdrasil. But anyway, so that's about the general gist, you know, Matthew 5:39, Matthew 5:44, Matthew 10:8. It's symbolism correlating to, well, several trees of life, the staff of Hermes, and just kind of like the flow of energy within the universe. I do gotta say one thing though. When it comes to the spiritual practice of cleansing the Kundalini, of cleansing your chakras, I should say, there is a reason why you start down here and work your way up. Okay? There's a reason for that. Let's say if you just start up here with the very top and you clean it out and let it all go down the river, then you've got more blocking this one. And then same thing, if you cleanse all that, then you've got an even bigger block there. And eventually what will happen is the entire flow of the river stops, and the entity, being, individual, whatever, ends up either going insane, psychosis, or they will end up dying from their energy being disconnected. So I do not recommend doing this by yourself if you're going to get into this as a spiritual practice. If Christ specifically isn't the way that you want to go, but even still, there's a reason why Matthew 5:39 comes before Matthew 5:44. You know, the resist not evil comes before the love your enemies. Okay? And that is so that way all this negative emotional gunk, all the trauma that you're dealing with, you know, all your fear, shame, guilt, grief. I tend to get these two mixed up quite a bit, so if I did, please forgive me. All the lies, especially the ones that you tell yourself, all the illusions, and all the earthly attachments, the egoic attachments, right? Learning to let go of all those things. There's a reason why you start down here. That fear will stop you from going forward every time. And if you try and start up here as far as cleansing it, it can lead to problems further down the system. And by problems, I mean some serious problems. So, you know, don't be afraid, but at the same time, be smart about it, you know. But that's what I've got for you guys on this video. Got another one coming up here shortly that I hope you guys will enjoy. Anyways, if you liked the video, like, comment, subscribe. You know the deal. If you didn't, you know the deal too, hopefully. I mean, it should be known by now. Anyways, have a good one.